My name is Elena Brooks. I'm 33 years old, and the day everything changed, I stood outside a lawyer's office holding a thin folder that carried more weight than it looked. Inside, my stepmother Vanessa was already speaking, her voice calm and controlled as she told the attorney that only named beneficiaries were allowed in the will reading. My stepbrother Ryan laughed at something she said, like the outcome was already decided. They believed I had no place there. What they didn't know was that my father had made one final decision before he died, and it was sitting in my hands. Grew up in a small town called Brook Hollow, the kind of place where neighbors waved and people remembered each other's stories. My father, Daniel Brooks, helped families buy modest homes, and my mother, Lillian, taught piano lessons in our living room. She kept a jasmine garden in the backyard, and in the summer, the scent drifted through every open window. When I was 13, she was diagnosed with lung cancer despite never having smoked. She fought quietly for nearly a year. In her final days, she held my hand and told me the house was mine, not the walls, but what lived inside it. I didn't understand then. I thought she meant memories. 18 months after she passed, my father remarried a woman named Vanessa. She was charming, attentive, and quickly accepted by everyone in town. She had 2 children, Ryan and Sophie, and they moved into our home as if they had always belonged there. The changes started small. My mother's jasmine garden was removed because Vanessa claimed it bothered her allergies. The piano room became a lounge. My bedroom was given to Ryan, and I was moved to the basement with a smile and a suggestion that I'd enjoy the privacy. My father watched it happen, but he never stopped it. Over time, I became an afterthought in my own home. Conversations ended when I entered the room. Decisions were made without me, and even dinner felt like I was intruding on something that no longer included me. By the time I graduated high school, I understood clearly that I no longer belonged. Vanessa hosted a celebration, but none of my friends were invited. That night, standing in the backyard where my mother's garden used to be, I made my decision. The next morning, before anyone else woke up, I wrote my father a short letter telling him I couldn't stay somewhere I wasn't wanted. I left it on his pillow and took a bus out of town. I expected him to come after me. He didn't. 16 years passed. I built a life for myself in another city, starting from the bottom and working my way up until I could stand on my own. I called my father regularly at first, but our conversations grew shorter over time. Vanessa was always nearby, her presence lingering in the background of every call. Eventually, the silence between us grew larger than the words we exchanged. Then one day, Vanessa called to tell me my father had died. Her tone was distant, almost administrative. The funeral would be small, she said, and then she hung up. When I arrived, I realized even then I wasn't considered part of the family. I was directed to sit with the guests instead of in the front row. When I approached the casket, Ryan stepped in front of me and told me it was for family only. I said goodbye from a distance, standing in the back of the room, feeling like a stranger mourning someone I had once known better than anyone. That night, everything began to change. A nurse who had cared for my father called me. She told me he had talked about me every day, that he had tried to call but couldn't find his phone, and that visitors had been limited. Then she told me about a call he had managed to make to a lawyer when Vanessa wasn't around. The next morning, I drove to meet that lawyer. She explained that my father had realized something was wrong months before he died. He suspected he had been pressured into signing documents while heavily medicated. So he contacted her, arranged for a medical evaluation to confirm his mental clarity, and created a new will under proper supervision. In that will, he left the house and most of his estate to me, while providing Vanessa a modest monthly allowance. It was his way of correcting what he believed had been done unfairly. That document was the one I placed on the table in the lawyer's office. As it was read, the atmosphere shifted. Vanessa's confidence faltered, and for the first time, uncertainty replaced certainty. The reading was suspended while the document was verified. Over the following weeks, everything was confirmed. Any medical evaluation, the witnesses, the timing, everything supported the validity of the second will. The earlier version was called into question due to the conditions under which it had been signed, Vanessa's lawyer withdrew, and Ryan's. Attempts to challenge the outcome went nowhere. The court process was slow and methodical, but the conclusion was clear. The second will stood. When it was over, the house and most of my father's estate were legally mine. Vanessa received the stipend my father had outlined. Ryan had no claim. The outcome wasn't dramatic or triumphant. It was quiet, almost anticlimactic. What I felt wasn't victory, but something heavier. Closure mixed with the realization of everything that had been lost. When I returned to the house, it felt unfamiliar at first, like walking into a place that had forgotten me. But as we removed the changes Vanessa had made, something began to return. The piano was placed back in its original room. The spaces opened up again. In the backyard, I planted jasmine where my mother's garden had once been. It didn't bloom immediately, but when it did, the scent brought back something I hadn't realized I was still holding on to. I decided not to sell the house. Instead, I opened it up to the community the way it had once been. Music lessons returned. Children came to read and learn. Neighbors stopped by, and gradually the house filled with life again. It wasn't about reclaiming property. It was about restoring what had been taken away. Before Vanessa left, we spoke once. She admitted she had been afraid of losing stability and security. But fear didn't justify the choices she had made. She didn't argue. She signed the final documents, and that was the end of it. Not reconciliation, but an honest ending. Months later, Sophie reached out. She apologized, not with excuses, but with honesty. She had believed what she was told when she was younger, and had stayed silent when she got older. We exchanged letters, slowly, carefully, without forcing something that didn't yet exist. It wasn't a dramatic reunion, just a quiet acknowledgement of truth. Among my father's belongings, I eventually found a letter he had written to me. In it, he said he had gone to the bus station the morning I left but arrived too late. He wrote that he had never forgiven himself for that. Reading those words didn't erase the past, but it changed how I carried it. For years, I had believed. He didn't come after me because he didn't care. The truth was more complicated. He had tried, just not in time. Now I visit the house regularly. The jasmine blooms every year, filling the air the way it once did. The piano plays again, and children's laughter echoes through the halls. Standing on the porch, I sometimes think about what my mother said, that the house was mine because of what lived inside it. It took me years to understand that she wasn't talking about ownership. She was talking about love, about resilience, about the things that survive even when everything else falls apart. My father wasn't perfect, and he failed me in ways that mattered, but in the end, he found a way to make things right. Sometimes, that's all anyone can do.